You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's ministries. You'll never be the same.
God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it, and really get it into their heart. And this, the way Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
The way Reverend Hood presents it, you can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days we need it more than ever, and Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
Today I want to talk to you about Jesus and the man with the withered hand. In the Gospel of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, there's a story where Jesus enters a synagogue. He enters the synagogue, and before he can say a word, he sees a man whose hand is crippled. And I don't know if it's crippled down, crippled up, crippled across, but there's something wrong with the man's hand. And it's a Sabbath, and there are people who are looking to find something wrong with Jesus. And so before Jesus can say a word, the super religious look at Jesus and they say, is it lawful to heal a person on the Sabbath? And Jesus tells the people, the super religious, he said, look, if you have a sheep that falls into off the road on a Sabbath, on a Sunday, wouldn't you pick up your sheep? He said, what's wrong with healing a person on the Sabbath? And Jesus looks at this man and he says, come forth. And the man comes forward, and Jesus says to him, stretch forth thy hand. He doesn't touch the man, but he doesn't pronounce healing on the man. He simply says, stretch forth thy hand. And the man stretches his hand, and miraculously, the hand that was crippled now becomes a fully operational hand with fingers that move the way that they're supposed to move. And so when I think about this story, I think about something a lawyer told me once. I've got a friend who's a lawyer, and he was telling me, we were dealing with some issues related to church property and with a tax dispute. all these years, the properties. Matter of fact, the studio I'm in right now, where I'm taping this, received this huge tax bill, and I called a lawyer and I said, we've never been taxed like this. I don't know what's going on. It's got to be a mistake. And I said, can you fight this in court? And he said, yes. And so as he began the process of filing, objections in court for the last 5 years, and we've been successful at every stage of this process. With each success, the lawyer told me the first time, he said, Nick, what we're doing is lancing the boil. And I looked at him and said, what do you mean we are lancing the boil? He said, sometimes a person will have a disease of the skin and they'll get a little bubble. And, the bubble is full of pus. It is full of a virus, some, infirmity, but it just grows and it pokes out of your hand or out of your leg or maybe out of your face. And he said at some point in the healing process, the doctor may feel it's best to take a sharp object and lance the boil so that the pus, the disease, the infection will run out. And he said, that's what we're doing right now. He said, we are lancing the boil. And, it's a scary process. But he said, that's what we're doing. And, I'm always asking myself, and we're winning in this process. But I always ask myself, what can I learn from Jesus about everything in life? And when the lawyer said, sometimes you just have to lance the boil. You got to push it. You got to stick a pin in that bubble so that disease, that infirmity can drool out. And he said, you can't be fully healed until you lance the boil. And when I think about Jesus and that man with the withered hand, Jesus does not touch it. He doesn't stick him. But what Jesus does is he challenges the man to stretch forth his hand. And in stretching forth his hand, in essence, Jesus is piercing. He is lancing the boil on that man. And the man cannot be healed until he stretches forth his hand. And in like manner, you and I are leading second-class lives very often because we have not lanced the boil. We are leading a life far less productive than what we could lead because we have just procrastinated. We have ignored the boil that's on your heart, the boil that's in your head. And let me break it down a little bit more, just in case somebody didn't get it. There's some of us who are living in second-class, inferior relationships. Maybe in marriage, maybe you're not married, but the person you're in a loving relationship with is not as good, not as true, not as kind, not as patient, not as wonderful as it could be. And if that's the case, maybe you need to lance the boil. And what I mean by that is, think about all the times in life when we know something's not right, we know it's not good, we know it's not healthy, but we stay involved with a person who's not good for us. We stay involved, we stay in a romantic relationship with somebody who doesn't have your best interests at heart. And at some point, but very often we may not even talk about it. We just go from day to day, week to week, month to month, and we put off the inevitable. And we put it off because we're afraid of what might come next. But if you lance the boil, what you are really doing is you are opening up that wound so that God will give you an opportunity for a better relationship. And this is so important in life on every level. It's important in love. It's important at work. It's important in your personal life. It's important in your professional life to lance the boil, to stretch forth your hand, and to realize that you cannot be the man, you can't be the woman that God has called you to be if you keep putting off the inevitable. And so I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge those of you today who are looking at this program to ask yourself, am I procrastinating the obvious? Am I procrastinating having a conversation with my wife, with my husband, with my grandchildren, with my grandparents or my parents? What am I procrastinating, and why is it I don't want to talk to them about why they are so mean? Why is it I don't want to talk with them about why they are so selfish, so self-centered? Why is it I am afraid to talk about the personal idiosyncrasies that get on my nerves? Why is it I don't want to talk to them about why they don't want to make up the bed? Why is it I don't want to talk to them about why they're keeping all their money to themselves? Why is it I don't want to talk to them about why they are arrogant and rude and condescending to me? Look down upon me because I'm a woman. Look down on me because I'm a man and I don't make as much money as they do. And at some point, if you don't have that conversation, you have not lanced the boil. And what Jesus is doing with the man in this story, in the synagogue, is he's challenging that man to push himself to the highest levels. And, physically, you and I have to always challenge ourselves. You and I, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, should lance the boil and ask ourselves, what can I do to have a deeper relationship with Jesus? What can I do to have a deeper relationship with God? And what is it that's holding me back? Holding me back from being the man that God has called me to be, from holding me back from being the woman that God has called me to be. And I want to challenge you today. I want you to ask yourself, how true am I to my own confidence? How true am I to what I think I can do in life, what I want to do in life? And why is it I'm not doing what I want to do? Why is it I'm not where I want to be? And why is it I'm so afraid to take the next step in life? And what is it about my life that's holding me back? And I encourage you to look at Mark chapter 3 and think about that man who for years, his entire life, has had a withered hand. And Jesus simply says, stretch forth thy hand. And when the man stretches forth his hand, miraculously, it comes to life. And I believe that God is calling you right now to stretch forth your hand. Stretch it up. Stretch it out in possibility and hope. And what you will find is that God will take you to places you never imagined. I'm going to come back in a minute. And when I come back, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about lancing that boil and stretching forth your hand.
There are people all across this globe who now will have the opportunity to know you like I do, because of course you are very forthcoming in telling stories about life, stories that are relatable, and that means something. how wonderful it is, and I just look forward to seeing how this platform, this new platform, will just rise and grow and really be a vessel through which you can be a blessing to folk all over this world. And Lord knows we need it.
God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
Today I'm talking about Jesus and the man with a withered hand in Mark chapter 3, where Jesus tells the man, "Stretch forth thy hand," and the hand that was deformed comes back to fullness of life. And I want you to ask yourself, what is it in my life like that man that needs healing? What is it in my body that is not 100%? And why is it I have not been able to, as the lawyer told me, lance the boil, pierce the bubble? There are sores on our bodies that some of us ignore. Is there a sore on your body? Is there an illness in your body that hadn't been addressed simply because you won't go to the doctor? Or you go to the doctor, they prescribe you medicine, but you won't take it. Life is full of times like that. And it's so important that we, as the lawyer told me, lance the boil, that there's a bubble on you. And, that bubble is holding the pus, is holding the disease, the inflammation. And unless you address it, you cannot be 100%. I talked to a lady the other day who told me that she has a 7-year-old granddaughter. No, not granddaughter, grandniece. She has a 7-year-old grandniece whose mother noticed that there's a little boil, a bubble, a knot on the back of her head. And she went to the doctor. The doctor said, "Oh no, it's just a bump. It's no big thing." But the mother persisted. And in persisting, they found out that they had surgery. When they opened this knot on the back of the head up, they found out that it was cancerous for this little 7-year-old. But it was the mother who's just pushing for this. She wanted to lance that boil. She wanted to find out what in the world was going on. I told some of you, I have a little 3-month-old grandson who right now has a disease of the lung. We don't know what's going on with him, but I want you to pray for him. But I'm so grateful that my daughter-in-law, the mother of the little guy, realized that there was something wrong in his breathing and something was happening that wasn't right. And by pushing the envelope and insisting that he go to the hospital, they saved his life. Now, he's still not out of the woods yet. We got to find a cure for him. But it all starts with lancing that boil. In my own life, I've been asking myself, well, Nick, what do you have comparable to lung disease? I don't think I have anything comparable to lung disease or the cancer that little baby I was telling you about has on her back of her head. But a few weeks ago, I'm almost ashamed to tell you this, but at the end of taking a shower, I did something I've been doing for years. Matter of fact, a doctor told me I could do it, but he's not an ear, nose, and throat doctor. He told me, he said, a natural way to clean your ear is just stand and let the hot water from the shower run in your ear. So I've been doing that for years. It didn't seem to bother me. But a few weeks ago I did it, and my ear closed up. I lost the hearing in my right ear. And I said, well, surely, it'll just shake itself off. But it didn't. And I went for 2 weeks like that. And, I'm a preacher. It was really throwing me off my edge, to deliver sermons and not be able to hear out of my right side. So finally, with some reluctance, I went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor that my wife had been to. And she told me she had a good experience with him. And it was the first time in my life I've ever lived with an ear that didn't hear properly. I may have had 5% hearing in that ear. But I went to the doctor, he looked at it, and he told me, he said, you've got a severe case of infection in your ear. He said, this is going to require medication. Well, I'm going to be honest, I joyfully received the prescription. I joyfully went to the pharmacy and joyfully began to self-administer the medicine that he gave me. And in a sense, me even going to the doctor was like lancing the wound. It was piercing that bubble. And I think so often in life, we live second-class, inferior lives because we refuse to go to the doctor, because we refuse to admit we need help, to refuse to admit that you cannot help yourself, and you need somebody who has more knowledge, more information about what you're going through than what you could do on your own. And that's lancing the bubble. That's cutting open the disease so it can flow out of your body. And this is true not just physically, but it's true emotionally. There are many of us who are living substandard kind of lives and substandard relationships because we don't talk with one another about what we're going through. Some of us don't. We need to talk to a doctor who can help you think through your issues. If you're depressed, you need somebody to help you figure out, why am I depressed? Why don't I feel good about myself? What is it that's making me miserable? And if you can't figure this out on your own, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means you need a little extra help. And sometimes that's all we need, is just that little bit of encouragement, that little bit of insight that a doctor, a pastor, a friend, a father, mother, sister, brother, somebody, who you listen to, who will talk to you, who will give you an honest opinion to say, hey man, you could do a lot better. You, sister, you deserve better than this. And have you considered doing X, Y, and Z? And to me, that's the part, the start of healing. And that's what we see in Jesus with the man in the synagogue, where he goes into the synagogue, he sees a man who evidently has been deformed and living a substandard life for years. The man's hand is twisted, and it's Jesus who tells him simply, stretch forth thy hand. Isn't it interesting? Those are the same words that God told Moses, when trying to persuade Pharaoh to let my people go. He said, just stretch forth your hand. And Moses, he said, what's in your hand, Moses? And Moses said, well, I have a stick, my walking stick. Got to remember, Moses was 80 years of age when he went back to Egypt. And God tells him, just stretch forth thy hand. He stretched forth his hand, and the stick became a snake. Another time he stretched forth his hand, and the river Nile turned into blood. When he got to the Red Sea, he says, stretch forth thy hand. He stretches out his hand, and the sea parts. And I've told some of you, I've said that on this show before, but I've been to Egypt, and in visiting the big museum in Cairo, they have mummies of all the pharaohs. And all the pharaohs are buried like this except one. And the one who isn't is buried like this. And I asked the Egyptologist, I said, why is he buried like that and everybody else has their arms crossed? He said, because he died an unnatural death in the Red Sea. And I said, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. I said, the Bible says it, and here I see it right here. But it all started with Moses stretching forth the hand. And we're near the end of this show, but I want to just challenge you today to ask yourself, how often in my life could my life have been better if I just pushed the envelope a little bit more? If I just stretch forth my hand. Stretch forth your hand and go to the doctor. Stretch forth your hand, reach out for a lawyer. Stretch forth your hand and go to church. And one of the things you'll find is that God has a blessing waiting for you. But you got to do something for yourself. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop feeling totally overwhelmed. But realize that, like that man with the withered hand, you may need somebody today, like me, just to encourage you to stretch forth your hand. Stretch forth your hand. Help your grandchild. Stretch forth your hand. Help yourself. Stretch forth your hand. Help the church. Stretch forth your hand. Help this ministry right here. Be a blessing, just as God is a blessing for you. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. It's been a pleasure being with you. I love just telling the stories of Jesus. I love talking about how the Lord is making a difference in my life. And I love challenging people to think to themselves and ask themselves, when am I going to get out of my box? When am I going to get out of my emotional cage? And when am I going to taste the fresh air that God has for me? God has even more for you. You may be old in years, but the best is yet to come right now. And you may say, Nick Hood, how do you know that? I said, because I'm getting older too. I just turned 74, and I have never felt better about life because I can see so clearly now what God has planned for me. And part of that plan is right here with you. So thanks so much for being here today. God bless you. God keep you. Remember, I'm praying for you. I look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.
We hope you've been blessed in a powerful way. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries at 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word